There are moments in life that feel too beautiful to be real, and looking back now, I should have trusted that feeling. It was a Saturday evening in October, the kind of evening where the sky turns gold and everything feels like it's been pulled straight from a dream. Daniel had taken me to the same little restaurant where we had our first date, 3 years ago, almost to the day. I remember thinking how thoughtful he was, how lucky I was, how far we had come together. We had been through so much, long nights when his business was struggling, months when I worked double shifts just so we could keep our heads above water. I gave him everything, my time, my energy, my faith, and I never once complained because I believed in him. I believed in us. That evening, he reached across the table and took both my hands. His eyes were glassy, full of something I had never seen before: emotion, gratitude, love. At least, that's what I told myself it was. He got down on one knee right there in the middle of the restaurant, and he cried. Real tears, the kind that rolled down his face slowly, the kind you can't fake. He said, "You are the only woman who has ever stood by me without conditions. Will you spend the rest of your life with me?" The whole restaurant went quiet, and then they erupted in applause. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. That night, I floated home. I called my mother. I called my best friend. I took photos of the ring, a simple gold band with a single diamond that caught the light just perfectly. I stayed up until 2 in the morning just staring at it, thinking about the future, our home, our children, our life. But what I didn't know that evening, what I had absolutely no way of knowing, was that 20 minutes after Daniel left my apartment, he drove straight to his mother's house, and he told her everything, and she did not cry tears of joy. I had met Margaret only 4 times in 3 years. Daniel always had a reason to keep our relationship short and our relationship distant. I told myself she was just a private woman, reserved, that she needed time to warm up to me. But what I didn't understand then was that Margaret didn't need time. She had already made up her mind about me, and a diamond ring on my finger wasn't going to change a single thing. The very next morning, my phone rang. It wasn't Daniel. It was her. Her voice was calm. That was the first thing that unsettled me. Not cold, not rude, just calm. The kind of calm that people use when they have already decided the outcome of a conversation and they're simply waiting for you to catch up. "I think we need to meet," she said. "Just the two of us. Today, if possible." I told myself it was a good sign. Maybe she wanted to welcome me into the family. Maybe she had a piece of jewelry she wanted to pass down. I dressed nicely. I even brought flowers. I sat across from Margaret in her perfectly decorated living room and watched her pour 2 cups of tea like we were simply two women having a pleasant afternoon. Then she set down the teapot, folded her hands, and looked at me with those sharp gray eyes. "I'll be direct," she said. "Daniel is not going to marry you." I felt the air leave my lungs. She continued without blinking. She said I wasn't from the right background, that my family didn't have the social standing she had worked her whole life to build, that Daniel had a future, a carefully planned future, and I simply didn't fit inside it. She had already identified someone else, a woman from a family she approved of, a woman she had apparently been quietly introducing to Daniel for months. Months! I sat there with those flowers still in my lap, and I felt something inside me quietly break. I drove home in silence. Not cry, not yet. I was too numb for tears. I called Daniel the moment I got through the door. He answered on the first ring. I told him everything his mother had said, word for word, and I waited. I waited for him to be angry. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for the man who cried on one knee just 24 hours ago to tell me that nothing could come between us. Instead, there was silence. And then, "She means well. She just needs time. Can you give her that?" Time. He was asking me for time. That was the moment the numbness broke and the pain rushed in. I gave him 4 days, 4 days of unanswered messages and short phone calls that ended in excuses. And then on the 5th day, he arrived at my door with the look of a man who had already made his decision. He said he loved me. He actually said that, "I love you." And then in the very next breath, he told me he couldn't go against his family, that the engagement had been a mistake, that he was sorry. He reached for my hand. I stepped back, because I realized in that moment that Daniel hadn't proposed to me out of love. He'd proposed to me out of guilt, and his mother had simply arrived to collect what was always in her mind, hers. He left, and I stood in my hallway holding a ring that suddenly felt like the most expensive lie I had ever been given. But I wasn't broken, not completely, because somewhere underneath the heartbreak, something else was waking up. I took 2 weeks for myself. I cried. I grieved. I let myself feel every single thing, the humiliation, the anger, the loss. And then, one morning, I woke up, made my coffee, looked at that ring sitting on my nightstand, and I made a quiet decision. I was not going to disappear. The first thing I did was return the ring, not to Daniel, but to the jeweler. I had the receipt appraised and discovered something interesting. The ring Daniel had presented with tears and trembling hands, it had been purchased on a payment plan. Half of it wasn't even paid off yet. The man who wept about my worth couldn't fully afford the symbol he used to express it. I sold my portion back, took what was legally mine, and said nothing. The second thing I did was focus, completely and entirely on myself. I had put my own career goals on hold for 2 years, quietly supporting Daniel's vision. I went back to them. Within 8 months, I had been promoted at work. Within a year, I had moved into my own apartment, the kind I had always dreamed about. And then came the moment I hadn't planned. I ran into Margaret at a mutual friend's gathering. She walked in looking every bit the composed woman I remembered, until she saw me laughing across the room, confident, settled, glowing in a way I genuinely hadn't been during the years I spent trying to earn her approval. She approached me. She said Daniel was now engaged to the woman she had chosen. She said it the way you announce a victory. I smiled and said simply, "I hope they're happy." And I meant it. Because the greatest revenge I could have ever given Margaret was not anger, it was indifference. It was showing up in a room and being so whole, so unbothered, so entirely at peace that her victory speech landed in empty air. I heard later, through the same mutual friend, that Daniel's engagement was already showing cracks, that the woman Margaret had chosen came with her own expectations, and that the perfectly controlled future Margaret had engineered was far messier in reality than it looked on paper. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was the one I was finally writing for myself. Here is what I want you to take from this. If someone's love for you has conditions attached, it was never really love. It was management. And no ring, no matter how beautiful, can change the foundation it was built on. I walked away from a man on his knees, and I have never stood taller. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You are never as alone as that moment makes you feel.